Yeah, let's do some shooting. And there she is. Feels very well made. 5 shots in 2 seconds at 3, 5, 7, and 10 yards. Somebody is gonna win a Traeger right now. Oh, God, this gun, I wanna just throw it. One in the chamber. How about that? So last weekend, I went up to Seattle for the Seattle Supercross, and it was incredible. If you ever get the opportunity to go to something like that, I 100% recommend it. We went down into the pits. There's an option for you even to walk the track prior to the race. It was downtown Seattle, which I was a little bit hesitant about going to, but actually it wasn't so bad. So went down to Pike's Place, went to a few bars, and had a great time. One of the things that made this event so special for me was this. So you may have seen on Instagram, and I did a little short on this, or some photos, I think. Hunter Lawrence, who won the 250 SX main event, threw these up into the crowd after, and we were right next to the tunnel where the racers go back down into the pits, and I caught it. Couldn't believe it. So yeah, that was just super sweet. What a great memory to have. Maybe I'll find somewhere in the gun cabinet here to toss these babies. But anyways, if you ever get a chance to go check that out, oh my God, you have to. Let's go ahead and finish up part 2 of the review of the Smith Wesson CSX. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Concealed Carry channel for part 2 of the Smith Wesson CSX. Thank you so much for coming by. I'm excited to tell you my range findings. I'm pretty impressed with that, actually. And also dive further into depth on pros and cons of the gun that I found after shooting it. Before we jump into things, I want to thank you so much, Patron supporters. You guys are awesome. You're keeping this channel rocking and rolling. It's freaking sweet. I love that you guys are there. If you'd like to help support the channel, go into our description below and click on the Patreon link. It'll take you to our page. We do some awesome giveaways as well. Thank you so much to Northwest Armory. If you need to get anything, visit nwarmory.com. And if you happen to stop in the store, tell them that Grant sent you in. They're going to take very good care of you. And X-Hunt Targets. Those are the folks that do the awesome reactive targets that we use here on the channel. We're going to jump into that here in a second. Visit xhunttargets.com to order up some of those sweet targets. So we already did the part 1, which is a unboxing and kind of my first impressions. We go through the specs. Part 2, what we're going to do today is talk about the pistol from top to bottom, the things that I also found at the range, and also talk about my time at the range. So we'll start with that first. And if you've never seen this before, what we're doing is 3, 5, 7, and 10 yards, 5 shots in 2 seconds. That's our goal. Let's talk about the groups. I am actually quite happy with these groups. This is the very first time I've shot this gun. The 3-yard group was 1.8 inches. That is a great group. You have 2 shots in the same hole right there. Can't complain. Now let's go out to the 5 yards. 1.8 inches as well. 2 shots almost in the same hole right there. Now the 7 yards, if you've ever seen me, I don't know what it is about the 7 yards. It is like my make or break. Sometimes I completely knock it out of the park. Other times I completely the bed. Nice thing is I wasn't, going far left or far right. I was going in that vertical line, and you have 3 shots right in the center there, 2 almost in the same hole. What really made this a 5.8 inch group was this top one up here. The bottom one's not too far out of the center, but that top one's pretty far out there. 5.8 inches at 7 yards, not too bad. This is definitely going to be in a line with a spine if you're shooting on a silhouette. Now 10 yards. All right, this will be interesting because with this short sight radius, this front sight is taking up nearly half of the yellow part of the target. So we'll be on, I'm just not sure exactly where. So we'll see what happens with it. How I did this, no idea, but I did. Look at that, 2 shots in the same hole. This is actually a 1.9-inch group at 10 yards. I tell you, with this short of sight radius, I retired from the range. I was like, I'm done, going home, winning. This is a great shooting gun. It really is. And, you know, of course, I shoot a lot of guns, and what I want to give you is my good, honest feedback. There's some guns that I do like, some I don't. There's things that I like about guns that I feel that they can improve, and it doesn't mean that I'm not going to purchase the gun based off of maybe one or a few things, especially if you can replace them with aftermarket parts that's going to fit what you're looking for. So I'm going to, break this thing down, give you my pros and cons. Hopefully this will give you the information that you're searching for to make a better educated decision on whether or not this pistol is going to be a good fit for you. Let's go ahead and talk about the sights, and then we'll work our way down to the magazines. Now, these sights, there's nothing super special about them. In my opinion, this CSX is like their base model. I am crossing my fingers and hoping that they come out with a Performance Center model, and that's the one that I'll probably add to my collection of guns. This is not to say that this is not a good gun, because obviously the Performance Center model will cost more. That's just how it is. But the sights, they're not bad. They're metal sights, they're dovetail sights. They have some nice serrations in the sights for anti-glare. They are not tritium. They're not high-vis sights. They're a 3-dot sight. So 2 dots in the rear, 1 dot in the front. And they are easy to pick up on. Now, being that the sight radius is so short, yeah, if you're shooting out at distance, does it get more difficult? Of course it does. So, be patient with yourself, especially if, you're not used to shooting a gun this small. But other than that, not bad. I do foresee in the future that there will be other sight options for the CSX coming out, being that this is not like a proprietary mounting system or anything super special comparative to other Smith & Wessons. Now, going into the slide I actually do really like. This gun is very reminiscent of a 1911. Some people say, oh, it's a micro compact double stack 1911, and you can definitely see the characteristics behind that. I like the slide, that it's light. When the hammer's back, the slide is actually very light. I wouldn't say that it's lighter or necessarily easier to manipulate than, say, the Smith & Wesson Shield EZ, but it's just about there. If you can operate any slide, you'll definitely be able to operate this one. And you get a nice positive grip. I think it's awesome that they have the front serrations on there, because some of the Smith & Wesson Shields prior to, you didn't necessarily get a great positive grip up here on the front of the slide. So with this, you definitely do. On the back, those serrations are equally as awesome. And in the very back of it, you'll see on the Smith & Wesson Shield EZ, they kind of, the back of the slide is a little, almost like a bulge to it, where you get that extra little positive grip on the back of the slide, and they incorporated that into here as well. You have some nice serrations on the top of the slide for anti-glare. There is a little cutout here, and this is going to be kind of like your loaded chamber indicator there. And overall, nice slide. I like it. Aesthetically, looks good. The fit, the finish, everything, perfect. Let's go into the controls here real quick. Now, one of the things I like about this gun is it's an ambi gun. You have an ambidextrous slide release and lock. You have an ambidextrous safety, and you have a ambidextrous magazine release. Now, the magazine release is not ambidextrous as is from the factory. It's set up on the left side of the gun for right-hand shooters. However, inside the box that comes with it, you have another magazine release, and this is going to be for the right side of the gun, for you left-handed shooters. So you can swap that over if you want. They did a great job with that. So the controls are very easy to manipulate. They don't stick out very much. They're nice and flush, which I like a lot. I'm really digging the controls on this. I think that maybe in developing this, they saw how much people liked the controls of maybe the P365, because those aesthetically look fantastic on the gun. They don't stick out very far, but they're very easy to manipulate. And actually, comparative to other Smith & Wessons, this is a much easier safety to manipulate than some of the others, because I find that some of them are so buried down into the frame, you kind of get to it at a funky angle, or you just may not get a very positive grip on it when you're trying to engage or disengage at safety. The slide lock release locks back, goes forward very easy. Not all Smith & Wessons are easy to just send that slide home. This, super easy, and right there, it's ambi too. Let's talk about the trigger real quick. Now the trigger, it's not a straight pullback like you'd find on 1911s. It's kind of... This is not my favorite part. I'm just going to tell you that. The trigger is not my favorite part. There's a safety on it, which is fine. Now, majority of the safeties that you're going to find are going to be like a Glock, where the safety is in the center of the trigger. Or like with the other Smiths, where it's kind of that funky angle. This is like a combo of the two, where the safety runs the full face of the trigger, and it's kind of like on a hinge in the center of the trigger, just like you'd almost find on a Glock, in a way. It sits down nice and flush. The only thing I didn't care for about this trigger was the reset, and the pull is a little stiff. It reminds me a lot of the Kimber. This micro Rapide, whatever you guys want to call it. All right. It reminds me a lot of this, where you find this nice defined wall, like you'd find with the 1911, but then the brake on it is surprisingly heavy. And I find that to be very similar with this. So you disengage that safety, easy. Nice defined wall, and it has this really crisp brake, but it's a heavier than you would expect trigger pull. Now, on a defensive gun, is that necessarily bad? No. The reset on the trigger is one that I really didn't care for. And I've kind of voiced this about other guns. I think it was a Ruger LCP where I was like, I hate this trigger, you know, especially if you're trying to shoot fast, doing like the 5 shots in 2 seconds. When I was warming up with the gun, and I found myself not completely resetting the trigger, because what I thought was a reset wasn't, and I'm going to show you that right now. Here's where I thought was a reset. See that? And it wasn't. So there we go. We'll do it one more time so you can see again. Where I thought was a reset, where the reset actually was. Right there. Not a big fan of that. Now, are there going to be options for this as it gains in popularity? 100%. There's a ton of people putting the M Carbo kits in these as well because they didn't care for the trigger pull. So there's going to be good, reputable brands that, of course, are going to make aftermarket triggers for this, especially such a big brand like Smith & Wesson. Could the Performance Center model in the future probably have an improved trigger? Yeah, probably will. We'll see what happens, though. But if you get used to that trigger, it's not a big deal, in my opinion. It's a nice, crisp snap, a nice defined wall. It's the reset you'll have to get used to. In my opinion, it is not the most positive reset really in any way. You can hear a little bit of it, but it's not a nice click you'd find if you're shooting like Glocks. So let's compare this actually to the Kimber real quick. So define wall, boom, and here's the reset right there. That's all there is to it. Definitely the Kimber has a better reset. The trigger pull feels very similar to them. Now, since we're next to the trigger, let's talk about this magazine release. As you know, I really like the Smith & Wesson magazine releases. You don't have to put a ton of pressure into them for the mag to drop. And this is kind of nice because if you don't have large size hands, my hands are about medium size, sometimes you don't get the best, most positive grip onto that magazine release. This mag release has a really nice grip to it. It's still nice and flush with the frame, but it really just launches that mag out of there, which I really like. You're not trying to dig it out of there. I mean, I can't say enough good things about that magazine release. Perfect. Let's go ahead and talk about the frame of the gun. Now, these guns are metal on metal comparative to its cousins like the Shield, or you could say brother sisters. This is heavier. If you're looking for a micro 1911, that's to be expected. That might be one of the reasons you're even considering this gun, is to have a little bit more weight. Now, surprisingly, I thought that it would shoot a little bit flatter because of that weight. But if you take a look, majority of all the weight's back here. There's not a whole lot of metal sitting out here towards the front of the barrel and the front of the slide. So, went and shot it, and guess what? It did stay a little bit flatter, but not as flat as I was hoping. Maybe because there's still not a whole lot of weight out here. It still has some pop to it. And these are 115 grain bullet. This is not like something heavy. So I can imagine like with a 147 grain, this thing would probably pop pretty good. I would really compare it to the Sig Sauer 938 in that regard, as far as being a heavier gun, but not shooting as flat as I had expected. Is that a problem? No, not really. If it's shooting flat enough for you to be comfortable, flatter than what you're currently shooting, then it's a plus, even though it might be a little bit more weight. But it's gonna be a little bit heavier anyways, especially if you're coming from another like micro compact 1911 or say a Shield that's a single stack. Because if you have 7 rounds versus 12, guess what? It's going to be heavier anyways, right? So that's one thing I would say. If you bought this, went to the range, and you're like, oh, it's kind of snappy, shoot more. Get used to it. Bring that muzzle down and flat. It takes practice. So really, take that with a grain of salt. I wouldn't say that, just because somebody says, oh, it's metal on metal, this thing's heavier, it's going to shoot so flat. I wouldn't say it's going to shoot so flat. This isn't, some X5 Legion with a tungsten-infused frame. That's the thing is, shoots fine, for a micro-compact gun. I would say as far as a micro-compact 1911 platform, this is probably my favorite shooting one. I was a little disappointed it doesn't have a rail on there. I would love for it to have a rail, because then you don't have to have something that's like a proprietary light or laser light combo per se. You might get away with something that's a little bit more universal, but other than that, it's nice. And you'll see here that trigger guard is thin, the undercut is high, you got that nice beaver tail there to get into the webbing of your hand and keep that slide going right by so you don't get that slide bite, which is really nice. But the fit and the finish of the metal is really sharp. It looks really, really good. I can definitely see some people even doing like a two-tone gun on these in the future, because this being gray or chromed or something like that with those black accents is gonna look beautiful. Now, the grip is pretty neat because this is a polymer backstrap and it's removable. You have 2 different sizes of back straps for the pistol itself. So here's an extra little back strap as well. And inside the box, you'll have this little nub, and that's actually goes into the bottom of the grip to remove that grip. But it's nice. It's tacky. I really like it. It's not so tacky to where if you have this, concealed, that it's going to rub on your skin and chafe. And you know what? If you want it even smoother, take some nice high grit sandpaper, get it wet, and just kind of buff it down. It'll definitely do that over time, but you can speed up the process with that. On the front strap, you also have that same grip texture up here too, which again, I really like. So kudos. Now let's go into the mag. This is one of the things that kind of bugged me, and it bugged me the second I opened the box, is you have this little collar or sleeve on the 12-round magazine. And you can see this thing is loose. And what I mean by it bugs me is, watch this. Drop the mag, and it already unseats itself. Every time you drop the mag, the freaking thing unseats itself. That drove me crazy. Could you put a little silicone down here and just make sure it stays? Yeah, totally. But this is what drove me crazy about it, is not that I couldn't put silicone, but this is one of those things that if you lost this little piece right now, because this gun is so new, I don't know that you'd be able to get another one. So you just kind of roll around with your 12-round mag kind of sticking out with a gap at the bottom. But they also included a 10-round magazine. The funny thing is the 10-round magazine and the 12-round magazine are almost the exact same length. Kind of funky. I would have hoped that they would have done a 12-round, because I think most everybody's going to roll the 12-round. It's just that little extra that you need. And this is me with medium-sized hands. Look at that. And then my pinky's on there securely. Perfect. If you had larger size hands than this, yeah, your pinky would 100% be hanging off the bottom. And that's with the Extendo 12-rounder. The 10-rounder, yeah, not so much different. Oh, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just carry the 12-rounder all the time? I don't know. Oh, and here you go. So you can see now that tiny bit of difference is whether the pinky's on the gun or not. You see, it's just barely on there. More than likely it'd be here when you're shooting. That kind of bugged me. Whatever. This is kind of nicky-nacky stuff. Definitely things that can be fixed. But, you know, these are things that I would consider. I would tell this to any of my friends or family. Like, hey, if you're going to be getting this gun, it's a good shooting gun. But here's some things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at this gun is, if you don't like the trigger, add that to your budget. It's a $610 gun already. Now, that's actually a really good value for a metal-on-metal gun, you know, but it can quickly turn into a $730 gun with a trigger. If you need to get extra magazines because you only like the 12-rounders, these can be difficult to find at this time, and they're probably going to be around $35 a piece. So that's another thing, because, you only get 2 mags, one's a 10, one's a 12. You could easily get up into, an $800 gun like that, right? But outside of that, this gun, just talking about it comparative to other micro 1911s, I think is a freaking winner. And you're looking, so here's a Kimber, 7-round capacity. Here's the Smith & Wesson, 12-round capacity. That's awesome. Plus, the Smith was probably $150 less than that Kimber on a really, really good deal. So that's something to consider. Other than that, hopefully this helped you guys make a better educated decision on whether or not this is going to be a gun that you want to invest in. I personally am not going to add that to the collection because I'm waiting for the Performance Center model, which I think is going to be sweet. So once that comes out, of course, Daddy's going to put it on the channel. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Like I said, if you want to be a Patreon supporter of the channel, I greatly appreciate it. Click in the description below. That'll take you to our Patreon page. Of course, you can get entered in for our quarterly giveaways. And thank you for those of you who are Patreon supporters. This is rocking and rolling because of you. Thank you so much. If you need to get anything, visit nwarmory.com. Northwest Armory takes care of us, so let's take care of them. And, of course, X-Hunt targets. If you want to get some of those sweet reactive targets, you can order them at xhunttargets.com. Other than that, you guys, thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
I see a little bit of a shadow though, so I'll hold them up again. I just want to
jump into the review for the, or visit xhunt.com. I'm sorry. Find that nice defined wall, and then it's just, oh, here we are. Nice. So you find, okay. So let's do it again. Hold on a second. One more time. More adding in that weight. Oops. But I'm waiting, or I should say.
thank you.